Spider-Man is one of the most iconic superheroes ever made, and I think his story is perfect for a Dungeons & Dragons character. With so many iterations of the character existing across all media, I've had a lot of options when it comes to sources, but I think I've made a build that represents them all pretty well. I'm only focusing on the Peter Parker version of Spider-Man here, so there won't be any invisibility or lightning powers on this one. The character sheet is linked in the description, so be sure to take a look if that's something you're interested in. First of all, I'm going to go over some of the areas I was focusing on when building this character, starting with Spider Sense. I wanted to have some abilities that would allow for the enhanced reflexes and perception that come with Peter's powers. I also want some way of replicating web shooting, wall crawling, and enhanced physical abilities, which will probably take the form of spells. Finally, I wanted to have some abilities to represent the various gadgets that Peter uses, like the taser webs. Peter Parker is a human, and we will be taking the variant option, giving 2 ability score increases, a feat, a skill, and a language. I will cover most of these later in the video, but for language you can take anything you like, it doesn't really matter. I went for Elvish. Next we have the character's class options. I designed the character to be level 10, but I'm going to go through level by level, so you can scale to whatever you like. First of all, we are going to be taking 3 levels in Monk to give us the unarmed combat ability Spider-Man uses in the form of martial arts, allowing us to use dexterity instead of strength for unarmed strikes, and it gives us increased damage as well as the ability to make an additional strike as a bonus action. We also have unarmored defense, giving a boost to AC when not wearing armor. Spider-Man does sometimes wear armor, and even his most iconic suits could potentially be considered very light armor, but I think that unarmored is the best representation of the character. Next we have some key abilities. Key isn't really in line with Spider-Man, as his abilities aren't mystic in nature, but the abilities themselves do line up with his combat style. We have Flurry of Blows, allowing for even more unarmed strikes to be made as a bonus action. Patient Defense lets us take the dodge action as a bonus action, and Step of the Wind allows us to disengage or dash as a bonus action, and doubles jump distance. We gain unarmoured movement, increasing our movement speed and in turn allowing for further jumping, and deflect missiles can be used to catch incoming projectiles, which is one of the abilities I'll be using to represent the Spider Sense power. At 3rd level we gain a monastic tradition, and we will be taking the Way of the Open Hand, which gives us the ability to apply a negative effect on a target we hit with Flurry of Blows. This ability could knock them prone, push them 15 feet, or remove their reaction. That brings us to level 3. We are going to be taking more monk levels later, but first we'll be putting 3 levels into wizard. The main purpose of the levels here will be to acquire some spells that will be used to represent some of Peter's powers, but we will also need to take an arcane tradition, and I think that divination is the best choice here. This gives us the ability Portent, which lets us roll 2d20s after a long rest, allowing us to use them in place of other rolls once each should we wish. My mindset with choosing this is that it will kind of work like Spider Sense, and for this character it was better than the other options available. The only other things added by this class are the spells, which I'm going to go over later along with equipment. Now the final 4 levels are going to be going back into Monk, bringing the total Monk level up to 7, giving us the feature Slow Fall, reducing fall damage taken by 5 times our Monk level. We also get Extra Attack to improve our combat ability, and Stunning Strike, which honestly feels more like a Miles Morales ability, but in my head this could be used to represent something like the taser webs, or even just the target being stunned by a regular web attack. Key-empowered strikes allows us to consider our attacks magic for the purposes of overcoming resistance, which is useful. And evasion allows us to better dodge attacks that would have us make a dexterity saving throw to represent the enhanced reflexes Peter has thanks to his Spider Sense. Stillness of Mind is given, allowing us to remove fear or charm effects from ourselves, And from our monastic tradition, we get Wholeness of Body, letting us heal ourselves 3 times per long rest, which is like the natural healing ability that Spider-Man has. This brings our character up to level 10. If you would like to take them further, then I would just suggest putting any additional levels into Monk to increase your martial arts damage and gain useful abilities like Diamond Soul and Quivering Palm. I did also consider Rogue when making this character to represent Spider-Man's stealth ability, but I don't see him as being very reliant on sneak attacks, and I think that the high dexterity Monk build will make us stealthy enough, although that is another option if you want a more sneaky character. As I often do, I've created a Homebrew Ability to go with the character so that they feel a bit more unique to play. This ability is called With Great Power, and can be used once per long rest to guarantee a maximum roll on a saving throw, attack roll, ability check, or damage roll. This equates to a critical success for most of those, and in the case of damage rolls, this affects all of the dice used in a single attack. If you use extra attack, you must roll the dice as normal on the second attack. This is designed to represent Peter's ability to push himself beyond even his superpowered limits when he really needs to. So you can ace a check to lift some rubble or stop a train when things are at their worst. The damage side of this ability can seem a bit unbalanced, and that's because it is. But in the hands of this monk-based character, it's fine. Although, if it were to be transferred to a paladin or ranger, then yes, it would be a problem. For starting equipment, we'll be using the monk starting options, and for the weapon, it doesn't really matter what you take, because Spider-Man is only seen using weapons very rarely, and this build is designed to function perfectly fine with just unarmed strikes. Next, we will take an Explorer's Pack, and are given 10 darts. That's all of the starting equipment that's given, but you will also need to get yourself a spellcasting focus or component pouch, and a spellbook, to use the spells given by our wizard levels, as well as something to represent your Spider-Man costume that is capable of concealing your identity. Now, as for the spell choices, we have 3 cantrips, and I took Blade Ward, Shocking Grasp, and True Strike. Shocking Grasp may seem like a strange one, but I'm using it to represent the taser webs that Peter employs, as I think they work in a similar way to the spell. Next, we have first level options. I would suggest taking Comprehend Languages, Detect Magic, Jump, Long Strider, and Thunderwave. Thunderwave is also being used to represent the taser webs, although it's perhaps a bit more aggressive than they should be. Jump and Long Strider are just representing Spider-Man's physical abilities, then Comprehend Languages is to try and cover Peter's natural intelligence, and Detect Magic is going to be another element of the spider sense. Finally, for second level spells, we have Spider Climb and Web. I feel like I don't really need to explain why I picked those. For ability scores, we will need to focus on Dexterity and Wisdom for our monk abilities and armor class. Then Intelligence for spellcasting and Constitution for health. Finally, Strength and Charisma won't be very important. Also, because of the multiclassing, you will need to make sure that you have an Intelligence of at least 13 so that you can take the wizard levels. For background, I think that Folk Hero seems like the best option, representing the humble life of Peter Parker and even the more low-level hero side of your friendly neighbourhood Spider-Man. Alignments are usually pretty tricky to decide on, and in the case of Peter, I'm still a bit conflicted. Peter is definitely on the good side of things, but he's often depicted as flawed. His famous backstory is based around him making a selfish decision that led to his uncle's death. But I think that generally speaking, after Peter is Spider-Man, in most modern tellings he sticks quite solidly to the great power, great responsibility, and I think that this is a pretty lawful good way of doing things. For skills, we get Animal Handling and Survival from our backstory, then an additional skill from the Variant Human feature, for which I would take Perception. Finally, we get 2 monk skills, and I would take Athletics and Acrobatics. As a variant human, we also gain access to a feat, in addition to some given from our monk levels. I think that Alert is a good option to take as our first feat, and while Athlete and Mobile are also quite good, you're probably better off using the ability score improvements to increase your dexterity instead. That's everything I have for the character. The character sheet is in the description, and be sure to let me know in the comments if you have any other characters you'd like to see builds for. If you want to see more of my Marvel builds, then there's a playlist linked on screen, or you can click on the other link to see a video going over some of my homebrew weapon mechanics. Thanks for watching.